Why stories?
What are you doing?
Don't judge me!
Is that fun? Hmm? I think you could have brought more to the role. So, why stories? What is it about literary stories that gets us going? What is it about them that makes us analyze them and consider them to be something profound? I mean, what's the big deal? They're really just there to entertain us, right?
Wrong!
Stories or narratives are so much more than that. Sure, they can be really entertaining. My mom assures me that Dickens is hilarious, and I myself happen to find Anne Rice pretty thrilling. But stories do more for us besides amuse or enthrall. They're meant to teach us something, something about ourselves. So why stories? Because stories reflect who we are, both on an individual level and in the broader sense of humanity. So stories are like mirrors. They let us take a look at ourselves, figuratively and metaphorically, of course, but they let us see the things that explain our identities and the identities of others, that show us something about human nature and our propensity for good or evil. And they let us see the struggles we face as individuals and as a society, providing us opportunities for enlightenment and subsequent understanding of the world around us. Throughout this course, we've studied a wide range of narrative styles, and they've all provided opportunities for self-reflection and societal reflection, such as Oscar Wilde's novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. To me, this is a great example of the enduring quality of literature, that even after 100 years, it can still tell us something about ourselves. In Wilde's story, we come face to face with an individual, Dorian Gray, who is representative of our possibilities as human beings. Now, these possibilities aren't always positive, and really it's the negative possibilities, I think, that provide us with more of a reflective surface to analyze, so to say. Dorian's evil isn't some external force that taints him. Instead, it's something internal, something intrinsic to his nature, and indeed to our own. Dorian could have remained a beautiful innocent. His possibilities could have sent him in a very different direction. But once the darker aspects of his character were brought to the surface, they basically consumed him. And Wilde's story therefore shows us the reality of our possibilities, that we can descend into darkness just as easily as we can rise towards light. He presents us with two opposing forces, Dorian, who represents the evil within us, and Basil, who represents the antidote to this evil, who brings balance and the chance for redemption into an otherwise dark world. So through Basil, we see that life has a way of offering us opportunities to change, to remake ourselves into something good. We can either scorn it, as Dorian does, or we can embrace it and save ourselves the trouble of trying to hide the body. Stepping away from the discussion of good versus evil, I'd like to focus a bit more on literature's ability to help us find our identity and to highlight the struggle that we face in doing so. There are three stories from this course relating to this that I'd like to talk about. The first being The Yellow Wallpaper. The Yellow Wallpaper is a short story, but I've always found that a really good short story can create just as much impact as a really good long story. Written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, this is the story of a woman driven to insanity by the repressive nature of the life she lives. It's a story that says a lot about feminism, as its main character, Jane, is driven deeper into her insanity by the overly dominant roles of the men in her life, chiefly her husband. Jane's life is indicative of the sort of negative repercussions that go along with restricting and oppressing people's identities, with taking away from them the possibility for self-actualization. Jane can't be her own person, as her husband controls every aspect of her life down to the hour, which stunts her emotionally and psychologically, thus leading to her ultimate break with reality. Now, like I said, there is a heavy undertone of feminism in Gilman's story, and this tone is repeated in Kate Chopin's short story, The Story of an Hour. Now, this wasn't one of the required readings for the course, but I've always admired this story, and I think it ties in well to this discussion. This is the ultimate short story, as it's told in barely 3 pages. Chopin tells us so much about society in it, though, as well as so much about our personal needs to become our own people, to step out of the shadows of more dominating individuals. Her protagonist, who has a heart condition, is gently told of her husband's death. She responds in a grief-stricken way, but once locked in her room and calm, she experiences a moment of wondrous joy at the prospect of the life waiting before her. That is her life waiting for her, and not just the role assigned to her in order to play second fiddle to a man. Her joy is short-lived, though, as the news of her husband's death turns out to be false, and the shock of it kills her. Her death is symbolic, as it shows us how desperately important it is to let our own identities grow and unfold. For otherwise, we die, mostly figuratively, but also sometimes physically. The struggle is further underscored in James Baldwin's short story, Sonny's Blues. In this story, we get a closer look at two roles humans often assume, that of the powerful fight for self-actualization, and that of the person standing by trying to understand it. Sonny belongs to this first type of person, and his brother to the second, and both of these characters tell us something about humanity. With Sonny, we come to understand how dangerous the journey towards the realization of our true identities is. And with his brother, the unnamed narrator of the story, we come to understand the struggle to understand this issue, to understand what it is that drives us. Sonny spirals further and further down into a black pit in his struggle to live as he feels he needs to live the life he needs, rather than the one society has fashioned for him as a poor black man. Sonny's fight almost kills him, and this says something about our need to realize our identities, something that says it's so strong that it can in fact send us closer towards oblivion. Sonny finally finds himself in his music, and listening to him play, his brother finally comes to understand Sonny, to understand his struggle, and how Sonny's life offers the rest of us the key to finding our own freedom. Now, these are all great examples of what I'm talking about, but if you're still not with me, then I have one more example that I think should hammer it home. In her memoir, Reading Lolita in Tehran, Azar Nafisi says of her students selected for a secret study group, they have no clear image of themselves. She says that her girls, as she calls them, come to see themselves through the eyes of others, through how others see them, react to them, and think about them. They come to understand the sort of roles in life they're called to play by how the rest of society treats them. This is something basic to mankind, that we learn how we're expected to think and act by how others respond to our habits and our views. Our own reactions to these factors help to add another dimension to the way in which we view ourselves, and this is precisely what literature does. It provides an opportunity for us to react to certain characters, plots, concepts, and settings that are indicative of real-world counterparts. Ultimately, though, it's up to us what we make of these revelations.